All right, artists, so now it's time to actually create your hand gesture. So I grew up with Star Trek in the house, and Vulcans have a thing where they say live long and prosper. And I actually think it's kind of befitting just going through what we are going through with social distancing and people being afraid. And so to live long and prosper is probably a decent message for people. I've decided to use contours for my project. So after looking at my hand from shapes and then the waving hand that I drew for contours, I feel like I was most successful by using the contour method. So I'm going ahead and I'm tracing the gesture of the hand. I wanted you to see this because it's a lot harder to differentiate lines that don't naturally just show themselves. So now you have to kind of figure out, or in my case, I have to figure out where those lines exist. So it requires a little bit more observational drawing. So then as I'm going down, you know, I'm looking for those markers. Like I know a knuckle's probably here because there's that like protrusion that we talked about in the last video. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to try and get those lines as accurate as I can. And then I'm going to go in and do this other hand too. What you have to kind of pay attention to is which finger is kind of resting on top of the other. And then I always kind of just go through and mark where I think I see a knuckle so that hopefully the lines that I'm drawing are a little bit more realistic. So then I can come through and just get some markers in there. Okay. So remember, your ability to draw a contour hand relies on your ability to look for the internal contours and how they build up. So looking for ellipses, so the curved lines that make up the top and the bottom of your finger, whether, you know, your fingernail, your bed, dependent on whether, it doesn't really matter whether or not you have a nail. I mean, your nail beds, as you start to draw them, they're going to have more of a curve and less of a flat, blunt edge, okay? So as I start to go through and fill in, I'm just going to use what I have gathered from the previous videos and start to fill in those details. And I'm just going to mark some things really quick. So wherever I see those protrusions, I'm going to go through and mark them for myself. And then that way it just saves me some time as I'm starting to fill things in. If your finger rests on top of another one, like this finger almost covers the nail of this one, you want to make sure you include that because it's going to make it look more realistic. And then look how far your nails extend in your finger and try and capture that as well. So, I mean, it's all things you've either watched me do in the previous videos or it's something that you've practiced. The waving gesture is probably the easiest one to do for obvious reasons because you can capture all external lines. You don't have to make it up like I did. Like you're still drawing observationally when it comes to filling in the internal lines, but you don't have to do as much of it when drawing in the external, like the makeup of your hand. Remember, thumbs, people have a tendency to just want to draw them in like a finger, and your thumb is on a half. So it's like kind of take a look at how far that nail comes up and into your hand. And kind of play around with it, okay? So once you have those lines, then you're just referring back to it every once in a while to kind of see. Remember, the guiding principle behind drawing in your knuckles is that you at least try and put in 3 lines per knuckle. That's just going to help it make it look like an actual finger, because less than 3, it tends to look too forced. It looks kind of cartoony. So if you can draw in 3, it tends to get the perspective across that what we're drawing is indeed a finger. So then I'm just going to go through and I'm going to follow that rule, try and get at least 3 lines so I don't age myself too horribly, so I don't make my hands look like they belong to a 100-year-old woman, but that they might belong to somebody who does a lot of art. So I am going to have some high some high definition wrinkles at my age because I use my hands a lot. Just like those of you that game a lot, you're probably going to have some high definition wrinkles because of the way you hold your controllers. I know my brother does. So take a look. Try and make sure that you're not filling in too generically, like where they all pretty much look like they originate from the same idea, because your fingers would have different markers. And then go through and try and like find if you've missed out any information. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. I need to go through and add in some nails, and all I want you to pay attention to is don't try and make things look too pretty. The idea is to make them look like they belong to you. And my nails, while I do try and shape them, you know, the white of my nail grows in kind of haphazardly. So I don't have like these perfect, well manicured nails. Some of you have some really nice nails, and some of you ladies, you actually get your nails done. So you'll want to keep that in mind as you're drawing. Okay, so once you get some of the interior lines, so you're working from soft lines like these to hard lines like the ones in my thumb, and you've added in some detail, so you've gone through and you've added in skin that comes off, like the skin that makes up my thumb is really rough. Like my thumb looks super old. So I like the way that that builds off. But the next step after this, so you have a gesture, you have it done in pencil, you've worked through to include some evidence of maybe like I go through and I put in some of those knuckle lines that are in the palm of my hand. And then maybe I go through, and as I look at my hand, I try and see where my hand overlaps over here, or if there's any creases in my wrist, and then I add those lines in as well. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through with Sharpie to build up the contrast, because when I go to add color, whether you decide you're going to add color through like shadowing, because some of you do prefer that, and I'll show you an example, 2 examples actually that I did, that both just use one color, and I just shadowed in and added value that way so that they look kind of 3D. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to outline this whole hand in black Sharpie. That way, whatever color I do decide to do, whether in one color or a few colors, it's going to hold and it's not going to mix in. So the graphite tends to pull. So the next time you see this, I'll have it Sharpied, and then I'm going to work to add color to it.